There's no doubt that if Colonel Bob Dilger hadn't been there, the A-10 would have been a real failure. He saved the cannon program, basically by being a bull in a china shop. Colonel Dilger, a great fighter pilot who had been one of the best fighter instructors. He was an air-to-air type, silk scarf kind of guy, a brilliant tactician, had been one of the best instructors at Nellis Air Force Base's Fighter Weapons School, which was the ancestor of the Navy's Top Gun, was doing that kind of work long before the Navy ever thought of doing Top Gun. And he, peculiarly enough, and kind of against his wishes, because he really wanted to just fly airplanes and shoot down other people, right? And which, by the way, he did in the Vietnam War. He was a brilliant flight leader in the Vietnam War, one of the best. He wound up in a bureaucracy, and this was a guy who really hated bureaucracies, right at Wright-Patterson, and got himself assigned to be head of the 30mm program. And beyond the shadow of a doubt, if he hadn't been there, simply no other guy could have accomplished the job that needed to be done. When Dilger was handed this assignment, you're now the project manager for the cannon, they really handed him a bag of worms. He didn't know that, of course. He just stepped in and looked at it. The first thing he saw that was real obvious was the engineers had already estimated that the round would cost over $100, something like $105 a piece. If you stop and think about that, that's a deal breaker. Because if you're going to have a cannon, you have to have war reserve ammunition. You're talking about millions of rounds of ammunition. If you're going to rely on a cannon, you're going to carry 20 passes worth of ammunition in every sortie. If you can't have a stockpile of weapons, of ammunition, that'll last you at least 30 days, you might as well not go to war. And at $100 or $105 a round, this was hopeless. You could eat up, the budget for a major fighter just buying ammunition. And he looked at it, and of course, being, a total non-bureaucrat himself, he looked at it and he said, "This is hogwash." He said, "I can do it for a tenth that." And he came very close to it. He actually delivered the round, a round that everybody had told him, all the cost estimators said would cost $105 a piece. He delivered it for $13 a piece. And to do that, he had to trample over every ordnance bureaucracy in the Air Force. It was amazing. It was amazing. But he turned out to have a natural knack for production engineering, and he knew how to pick people who were great production engineers. The packaging was a huge amount of the cost. The brass case was a huge amount. He innovated aluminum cases to save money. He just saved nickels and dimes everywhere, all of them violating some military specification, and some bureaucrat behind that military specification. He went through them like the Mongol army. Not only did he do that, but being naturally suspicious of, purely theoretical engineering, he said, we've got to test it every step of the way. And the Air Force was prepared at that point to simply, fire the gun a lot on the ground, which is traditionally what, Army and Air Force gun guys do. And if it fired pretty well, fine, it's qualified to go fly with the airplane. It'll be fine. Dilger didn't believe that. He believed, very rightly, that the things that happen when you fire an airplane off an airplane that are not the same as firing it off a cast iron mount, at Fort Huachuca or something. So he demanded airborne tests. And furthermore, he wasn't really sure that we were right about how lethal this thing was. We'd done a fair amount of ground firing at pieces of armor, and even at armor with gas cans behind it and stuff like that. But that's not the same as firing at the real deal. So he devised a program under a wonderful cover name. It was called the LAVP, the Lot Ammunition Verification Program. which was to fly real A-10s with real cannons and real ammunition and shoot them at real Soviet tanks. And he scoured up money out of the most improbable places. He got a lot of stuff for free just by kind of horse trading. You know, this is the kind of thing that fighter pilots and fighter maintenance people are really good at, is, you know, this kind of black market kind of wheeling and dealing. He found somebody in the intelligence community who was importing tanks, you know, Soviet tanks under very high classification, because nobody wanted to reveal who we were buying them from. But there were various satellite nations who had Soviet tanks, and who, you know, would have a general that could be bribed and you could buy some tanks from him, right? And it turned out this organization was so effective that they were getting far more tanks than anybody needed, right? They didn't know what to do with them. And somehow he wangled an authorization, probably illegally, to get a bunch of these tanks. And then he got a bunch of cast-off M48 Army tanks that they no longer wanted. He assembled the 5th largest tank army in the world. He had close to 400 tanks out in the desert in Nevada. He'd even wangled some Marine maintenance battalion. Somehow he got next to them to fix his tanks, because he said these tanks have to be loaded with ammunition, they have to have fuel in them, they have to have oil in them, and they have to have engines that can run, right? Otherwise they're not real targets because of the issue of fire. Fire is so important. You fire at some dead tank, you don't know whether you're going to light it on fire or not, right? So out in the desert, outside Nellis Air Force Base, he assembled the 5th largest tank army in the world for live A-10s to come in and shoot at. We learned so much from that program. The first thing we learned was that if we had sent the cannon to combat with this approved ammunition and everything, it would have failed the first day of combat, because there were some real problems with, first of all, the gun gases were in fact obscuring the vision of the pilot. Secondly, they were causing the engine to fail. There's such huge gun gas being developed out at the muzzle that was blowing straight back into the engines behind the cockpit. They were actually causing engines to shut down, to have compressor stalls and all this kind of thing. But once you had made your live firing passes, the very first ones, the problems were real obvious. He got on it. He changed the formulation of the propellant a little to reduce the smoke. They got a different deflector for the muzzle gases so that the gases wouldn't go into the engine. And thank God we're able to solve those problems, but only because we'd had that 5th largest tank army to shoot at. And by the way, he installed cameras inside the tank so you could see the inside effects. They counted up kills very meticulously, and by the way, fixed the tanks again and shot at them again. And we found out the cannon was devastatingly lethal, much more lethal than any anti-tank weapon available up to that time, much more lethal than the computer models had predicted, because the fire was so devastating. And we were getting like tank kills of well over 60% per pass, which was astonishing. The upshot was that this really brilliant, mostly illegal, terrifically opposed program saved the whole A-10. And by the way, its after effects still exists today, because out of that, the military reform movement of which I was a part realized the importance of live fire testing, of testing at real targets with real ammunition. And that became legislated as part of the operational test legislation that created the Office of the Operational Test and Evaluation Director, who exists to this day, who oversees all that. He has a special responsibility in the legislation for seeing that every vehicle, platform, ship, airplane that carries American military people is tested with live enemy ammunition to make sure the people inside can survive. If it wasn't for Dilger's stolen tank army, the entire A-10 program would have been a failure, and we would have never had the live fire testing that we have today demanded by the Congress.
It starts out as something that you've trained for all your life, trying to make a difference. The cool thing is, as an A-10 pilot, on times when the stars align and you're up on that mission where you get to make a difference, you get to see the reward.
It's a pretty easy answer to in terms of why are we here.
Number one priority is always saving guys on the ground.
The people that we so closely work with, the guy on the ground.
That's my whole soul and being, is that guy on the ground. You know, he could be an 18-year-old guy, 18-year-old kid with a rifle. That's all he's got, and I'm here to protect him.
Sanitized dog tags, ID card in the left breast pocket, E&E kit, watch tape, smart pack, in-flight guides, maps, DTCs, RMMs. Let's see, visor, pedal packs, water, snacks, seat cushion if you guys want to take that. Cell phones, you got one? Do you have yours? Okay, signed up? Yep.
One random Friday, spring of '03, so right after the Iraqi invasion, 3 guys in flight suits walked into the bar on campus and started talking about flying. And I was a year away from graduating, not really knowing what I wanted to do in life. And this guy started talking about flying fighters and being a fighter pilot and being in the Air Force and how awesome it was. And it kind of hit a nerve with me, if you will.
Jet. Attack! All right, attack, men. Kilo Chuck.
How I got interested in the A-10, I can still remember it to this day. I was at a hobby store because I, like a lot of kids interested in aviation, I built a lot of airplane models. And this was 1979. I was in high school and went to the hobby store, and they had a Revell model of the for then brand new A-10. It had only been operational for a couple of years at that point. And I just saw it, and I can still remember to this day looking at the wall of models and just trying to pick what I was going to build next. And I saw the box and the picture, and I was like, what in the world is that?
During about the last month of pilot training is where you put in for what airplanes you want to fly. And I was torn on the F-15E or the A-10, on which one I wanted to put number 1 on my list, you know. So luckily, one of the respected IPs in our flight had flown both the A-10 and the F-15E. And all he said to me was, Mitchell, what patch do I wear on my shoulder on Fridays? And the patch he always had on was the A-10. So I ended up putting the A-10 as number 1, and I loved the mission, the thought of the mission at the time. And
I was a first lieutenant. I was 26 years old when Desert Storm kicked off.
The 26-year-old fighter pilot caught the nation's attention a few months ago when he and a partner shot down a record number of Iraqi tanks.
You just never forget when you look down and realize that somebody's trying to shoot you down, and you've got to kill him first.
My first full 2 years in the Air Force, it was pretty much a completely Cold War type of mentality. Our training was all very low altitude. It doesn't seem that long ago to me, but I know talking to a lot of the guys now, you know, it's been quite a while ago, and when you look at the airplane from then to now, it's pretty amazing the different upgrades and that we've gone through since then.
The A-10 is the only airframe ever that was built entirely for this mission.
Yo, come on, man. They're about to do a gun run. You need to get down. Let's go, buddy. Come on, man. A-10 saving the day again, baby.
There's just nothing that matches the devastation that gun can bring.
640 clear hot. 30 mil inbound.
It's an awesome testament to the aircraft, I think, that the same gun that we used to kill main battle tanks in 1991 is the same gun where we can shoot a single insurgent that's fleeing on a motorcycle or shooting at our guys from a tree line.
Point is, you know, the A-10 was built for ground combat, okay? Ground combat we had the old linear battlefield type where we're going to go fight a bunch of tanks going low at 100 feet. And then we've morphed into a medium altitude precision strike platform because the airplane has been updated and modified to be able to do that. Sensors are great. They're amazing. They enable precision strike. They enable us to generate coordinates that are pristine, that are right on the target. But that will never replace just, you know, looking right outside of my cockpit and looking at the battle space. What am I seeing out there, big picture?
We do have this personal connection with the people that we so closely work with, the guy on the ground. We hear him getting scared.
Request immediate re-attack, same remarks, same restrictions, from last hit, north 75 meters.
We hear him getting excited.
Here we go, that's it. Good hit, good hit, good hit. Dash 2, I need you in the same remarks, same restrictions.
We hear the bullets flying. We hear him taking cover. We hear him breathing hard, and it becomes a very personal mission, especially when you start hearing about guys taking casualties down there. You take that hits very, very close to home. Nobody ever wants to hear that.
We care about guys on the ground. We do our mission in relationship to guys on the ground. We are support element essentially for the Army.
Hell yeah.
We care about the guy on the ground. I'm not saying air interdiction mission isn't caring about the guy on the ground, but it's not tangible. You can't really grab the benefits of it right then. You're going to wait a certain amount of time to see its effects. Air to air, how's that about the guy on the ground? Well, you're building air superiority, air supremacy, correct. But is the guy on the ground going to see it, get the tangible benefits of it? No. Close air support is about the guy on the ground. Combat search and rescue is about the guy on the ground. We're joint. We're a joint airframe and an air force, and that's what makes us different.
Okay, today we're going down to Sande Sufla. We've been there recently, so we've got a good lay of the land. Keep in mind, Espandi's been pretty hot recently, and they've had some contact from the same area around Sande Sufla. He went over the recent activity. Keep in mind the kind of MO we've had recently out of there. They've seen the Taliban commander kind of looking at the objective first, doing a quick meeting, picking up weapons en route. Usually there's motorcycles involved. You've also got the Taliban commander that they seeked a couple weeks ago. So you've got all that stuff going on right there in Espandi. We're going right into the heat of that. So keep that in mind as we get down there. Keep your eyes open and stay vigilant. All right, so our actions on contact, near and far ambush, return fire. Look to me, we'll either maneuver or we'll push through. IED, get 360-degree security and clear the danger area, and then we'll look to Kazovac. In the case of a complex attack, we're going to return fire, move out of the kill zone. Indirect fire, get down, look for distance and direction from me. Our actions on halt, take a knee, face out, and the march intervals that we're going to use are going to be dependent on where we are. In the open area, spread out as much as you can. The bigger we can look and the more intimidating we can look, the less likely we're going to take contact as we move down there. That's all I've got. What are your questions?
right, we're kidding up at 0615. 0615, kids on.
Shit, didn't say anything about Harris.
Yesterday, as most days, we went out on a dismounted patrol south of our fob to a village of Espandi. Basically, we got some intel that some bad guys were storing weapons in a building, and we had contacted them before. We'd run into them before. So we went down there to kind of check back up. And as we got down into the village, we ran into some sketchy guys.
It just, everything felt weird from the time we got down there. There was high tension. You could tell by the NA's body language. He was antsy, pacing back and forth. Second that happened, we spread out, let the PL do his link up. It was just high tension. I felt from the get-go.
Hey, let's go. Go push.
نفر که بعد نیست اگر سرشتی پیداش
کیافته یعنی کیافته خدمتی کاش کم تکم كل شاورز من
He said everybody is teachers here, so we are good people.
Okay, if they're good people, they have nothing to worry about. We're not
Yeah, I told him that.
Just a lot of sketchy reports. No one had the same story. Everyone, they were all family. They all lived in the same compound, but no one's story matched up.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to detain them. So as we started to RTB to head back to the base, we got word that the Taliban were maneuvering on us from the south.
Again, Commander 92A, be advised right now we're picking up and moving back through Espandi towards Ghazni. Mutant energy, go. So, that way. And Hog, if I could get you overhead of our lead element through Espandi, if at all possible.
As we were headed back to the base, we had to cross about 2 kilometers of open desert.
We were definitely in a huge open danger area.
We got about 500 meters outside of the village and started taking some pretty accurate fire.
Yeah, one in our
security.
that white building.
2427, send it.
Oh, dude, can I fucking hang it? Hang it! Hang it! I hanged it. Hey, shoot it! Go to fire!
Shoot it!
There was no cover. I mean, there were people trying to find tire tracks to hide, to get a little bit of a defilade behind. You know, in that position, the best you can do is spread out, gain fire superiority, you know, and then wait for some air support. Our comms were a bit of an issue at the time, and so they had a little bit of a struggle, but they did have A-10s luckily being pushed down to us.
I have your position south of the tree line.
We quickly responded, and working with the JFO on the ground and one of my JTACs, were able to get Hog on station quite quickly.
We were taking some harassing fire at that point.
Right here. Hey man, I know you're busy, but I need full security, brother. Who's shooting? Somebody's fucking shooting at us still.
But luckily we had the A-10s on station to come in and do a nice show of force, which is always a clincher for the enemy because they know what that entails.
The A-10 has proven itself time and again as being really a nightmare to the enemy. Just its mere presence alone is enough to keep the enemy at bay. And in that situation right there, again, just bringing those guys in quick and fast was enough to push the enemy away from our forces.
The ground troops that I work with, when they think close air support, they think A-10s. And I think the reason for that is they almost share the same mentality. If you were to say that there's a grunt in the sky, it'd be a Hog pilot.
They're very user-friendly. I mean, any one of these dudes could pick up the radio if I get shot in the face and, you know, employ. Those guys are really professional, very well trained, and if, you know, you have a random Joe who doesn't know what to do, those guys can pull it from them.
To win a war, you need boots on the ground, and to have boots on the ground, you need support, and you need the right kind of support to have boots on the ground, and it's the A-10, honestly. Even sometimes just a sound, or just telling the ground commander, hey, A-10's on its way, or we have aircraft supporting the 5 mics, and you ask what it is, you say, hey, we got an A-10 coming on. Yeah, it picks them up a little bit.
That sound is so distinguishable. Literally shakes the ground. It is amazing. You hear it first when it fires, and then you hear it echo from the gun in the sky. That sound right there just drives 11 Bravos nuts. It's amazing.
Hey, thanks, sir. I just shit my pants. Oh, yeah.
It's that sound of corny like freedom, but it really is. It's the sound of don't mess with me. It scares off everyone and shows you you're in good hands.
I think when people 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road look back on it, I think people will look at this airframe and it will always be known as an airframe that was, some people view it as ugly, who'd want to fly that thing? But you know what, it was an airframe that got the job done. It got bombs on target when it mattered most, and guys went home to their wives and kids because of the airframe.
It makes it, it's very humbling. It's that we are so trusted and liked by the ground forces. I think that's something that I'm very, very proud of. They love this airplane, and they trust us is the biggest thing. I mean, when you're shooting last night, we just looked at it, was between 65 and 100 meters away from the friendly guys, and for those guys to trust us to do that on a regular basis is very gratifying.
I got the greatest job in the world, man. I get to fly fighters when people need me to do my job. I have the chance to save lives and make a difference on the battlefield. that is when you hear the machine guns going off in the background, when JTAG's screaming, the bullets are hitting in his feet, and you can hear the bullets pinging off the Humvee that he's hiding behind, and then all of a sudden you roll in, put some rounds down and take care of his problem for him, and then you can hear the relief in his voice. That is the most rewarding and fulfilling thing that I can think of.
You've got a huge group of experts at what they do with a singular focus, and you can't really get that back once it's broken out.
That is awesome.
If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.